Hello and welcome to yet another reading wrap up. This one is for quarter 2 of 2025. So earlier this year I went over the 25 books I read in January, February, and March. And now I will be talking about the 20 books I read in April, May, and June. Starting off with April, I read 6 books that I all physically own. So that is a good sign for getting books off my TBR. And the first book I read was City of Bones by Cassandra Clare. This was actually part of a video that I ended up scrapping where I had like a random generator pick what book I read. And so I did not pick this up wanting to read it, but it wasn't terrible. I gave this 3.5 stars and it is a part of the Mortal Instruments. It is the first book I've ever read by Cassandra Clare, and it's part of this like ginormous series. I don't even know what that's called. And I know there's a lot of different ways to read it, but I am sticking with the Mortal Instruments first. This is a young adult fantasy, and we have our main character, Clary. And in this book, she gets introduced to this, fantasy world of shadow hunters. She kind of gets caught up in witnessing this murder. And then her mom also goes missing, and she's meeting all these weird people, and she thinks these are all not correlated, but maybe they are. You're just gonna have to wait and see. But I didn't rate it super highly because I think this was published in like 2007, and it shows, I won't lie, this writing wasn't the best, and it was a struggle to read and hear these teenagers act, but I do have high hopes for the series and I am glad I read this. Next up is another book I did not choose to read. This was my book club at work's pick, and it is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. And we are following this guy who wakes up in a spaceship a million miles from home, and all of his crewmates are dead and he has like no memory of how he got there. So he slowly starts piecing together that he is on this last chance mission to save Earth, which is terrifying. And surprisingly, I did find that boring. Now, I'm not a sci-fi person, so I don't know if that was just it. But like I said, he is the sole survivor. So the fact that I didn't like this main character meant that I didn't love the book. And I gave this a 3.5 stars, but to be honest, I would probably knock this down to a 3. Okay, I swear we're going to get to some books that I loved soon, but next we have Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jimenez. And I did give this a 2.5 stars. This is a romance, but I wouldn't call it that. It was definitely hard to read at times. I would definitely check trigger warnings because of this family crisis they discuss. That's all they say on the flap, so that's all the detail I'm gonna give you. So the first reason I didn't love it is that fact. It felt, very real and very sad, and I wanted to read to escape life, and this was very sad. Really just wasn't the book for me, but then our main characters were annoying. Like, I remember thinking the girl, I don't even know her name, Samantha? It doesn't even sound right, but yeah, I guess Samantha. I remember thinking she was so annoying, and then being in this guy's head was insufferable. I did not like it, and I usually love dual POV, so that was upsetting. Yeah. Okay, next up, a book I really loved, although I only gave it 3 stars, which is surprising, but it is Watch Me by Tahereh Mafi. She is the author of the amazing Shatter Me series. And so this is a book in that world, but it is a separate series. I don't want to give y'all a big synopsis on this because it is a part of Shatter Me. I remember this book reminding me a lot of the first Shatter Me book, with like the setup of everything and getting to know these characters, but we also got to see old characters, and I loved this book. I didn't rate it highly, probably because of the plot, and I don't think it totally went anywhere, but love these characters. So excited to see how this progresses. I just found a bookmark. But next up is Dinner for Vampires by Bethany Joy Lenz. This is the actress from One Tree Hill, which I love that show, but to be honest, this book wasn't really about One Tree Hill. It was more about her being in this actual cult. So the title is a bit misleading in my opinion because it says Dinner for Vampires, Life on a Cult TV Show. Definitely go in with those expectations knowing it's not about the show, but this was so good. When it was over, I was like, no, it can't be. Like, I need more. I can't believe this is her real life. It's crazy. And I didn't rate this because it's a memoir. I don't want to rate her life story, but like, this was so freaking good. I really, really recommend reading this. She has a crazy story. And then I ended the month strong with Savor It by Tara DeWitt. I loved this book so much. I gave it 4.25 stars. I just remember it feeling like these two characters were hanging out and falling in love scene after scene, and I loved that. I loved the setting of Oregon. I also was obsessed with our two main characters, Sage and Fisher. I genuinely don't think I could choose a favorite. I loved both of them. Also, it's set in a small town, and I love the small town in this. I will 100% be continuing the series. It was seriously a breath of fresh air, one of my favorite romances of the year. That concludes April, and then I read 7 books in the month of May, starting off with one I do not physically own, A Natural History of Dragons by Marie Brennan. Okay, I did not realize I only gave it a 2.75. That is kind of crazy, but I do remember enjoying my time there, and I just loved the setup of this book. I had really high expectations, and I do think I was let down a bit, so that's probably why I gave it that rating. But I feel like this was for fans of the Emily Wilde series, but it wasn't as fun and whimsical. It is obviously a fantasy, but it is written like a memoir, and I thought that was so cool. It is the Victorian era, so we have this woman studying dragons, even though she shouldn't be, and all the fun stories that come along with that. But I just remember the story kind of being all over the place. Like, the first half was really good, her kind of finding her way into this path of life, and then the last half was just kind of eh. But I am willing to try the second book, so we'll see. Oh my goodness, I gave this book a 1.5 stars. That is so mean, but it is Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. I knew this wasn't gonna be the book for me. I honestly should have DNF'd. I think this was in a video, but it just had all of these tropes that I do not love. It honestly is similar to Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, and I did not like that book at all. So it's, you know, dual timeline, childhood friends to lovers, and I cannot stand a book where our main character has another significant other throughout the entire book until she decides she wants to be with this guy. Like, I can't do that. That's a huge pet peeve of mine, so 1.5 stars. Okay, and the rest of the month is pretty strong, starting off with Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. I loved this so much. I highly recommend everyone should read this. I say that, but if you're not a fan of like the Regency era, then maybe you shouldn't read this. This is a historical fiction romantasy with our main character, Dora, who was cursed by a fairy and only has half a soul. And that leaves her in the unfortunate condition where she has no sense of fear or embarrassment, even when she should be embarrassed and fearful. And she's entering this London season with her bestie. I think it may be her cousin, but she's supposed to just like play it safe and be in the background and not, you know, cause scandal. But she meets this scandal-prone man. He's kind of like a magician, you could say. He has a very bad reputation, and yeah, that's all I'll say there. Next up is another historical fiction romance. No fantasy this time, but it is A Perilous Undertaking by Deanna Raybourn. This is a part of the Veronica Speedwell series. This is book 2. And in these books, we have our two main characters, Veronica and Stoker, as they are constantly getting into messes and trying to solve mysteries. This was good and fun. I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3 stars. It wasn't anything special, but I will be continuing. And then I read a 5-star duology. Both of these books got 5 stars. It is One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns. This is the Shepherd King duology. More books that I highly recommend. I loved these so much. These were books that were sitting on my TBR, and I don't know why I didn't go for them because I knew I would love them. I'm sure y'all have all heard about this duology before, but I will give a brief synopsis. We have our main character, Elspeth, and she has this monster in her head. I'm like giggling over this girl having a monster in her head. Like, what am I doing? Anyways, she has this nightmare in her head is what she calls him. and he protects her, he keeps her secrets, but he's also slowly taking over her mind, so that is a bit of an issue. She kind of gets involved with the king's nephew, and they end up trying to gather these 12 Providence cards, which in my head reminded me of tarot cards. And it is just so good. It's such an adventure. There's high stakes. I am obsessed with the found family in this. Rachel Gillig has become one of my auto-buy authors after reading this series. Okay, oops, I think I said those were the last books of the month, but that is not true. I read The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings, and I gave this a 3.75 stars. I honestly have a hard time describing this book. It is most definitely a Southern family drama, but there's also a romance brewing. Our main character is Georgia, and she has a very complicated family, to say the least. And her dad has just passed away, and all of the family is getting together for the funeral and the will reading and whatnot. And her brother obviously shows up, and he's an alcoholic. And so his AA sponsor comes, and both him and our main character Georgia are falling in love with this AA sponsor. He is Sam Penny. Let me put some respect on his name because I did love him. He was a 5 stars. Okay, we have another cat joining, but this book did piss me off. It did piss me off at times. It was quite insta-lovey, like insane. If you don't like insta-love, do not read this book. But I did enjoy the family dynamic and seeing the characters have some growth, thank God. It was frustrating at times and definitely predictable, but it was Jessa Hastings writing it, so of course there were some amazing quotes. I am obsessed with her writing. Also, if you're hearing Jessa Hastings and you're like, okay, so it was a toxic relationship, it actually wasn't. I mean, her family was definitely toxic, but her and the love interest weren't so bad. Moving into June, I read 7 books, starting with one I do not physically own, One Golden Summer by Carly Fortune. This was my first book by her, and I do think it'll be my last. Honestly, none of this author's books have ever sounded appealing to me. They all just kind of sound like meh, and I have been growing out of the romance genre, so the only reason I picked this up was because I heard it had a relationship between our main character and her grandma. And so I thought it was gonna be the perfect buddy read for me and my grandma to read, but the romance fell flat. I didn't care. It is a cutesy romance book by the lake. We have our main character staying at this lake house that she used to stay at when she was a kid with her grandma, and so they're back for the summer. And of course there's this guy, Charlie, and he's great and they're falling in love, but they shouldn't. I don't know, I don't see the hype with this. I'm gonna move on, I'm sorry. But then a book I did see the hype with, we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was my first classic since high school. So my first classic that I have willingly read, and it was so good. I already told y'all, I love Regency England. And what have all of those books taken inspiration from? Hello. This banger, I had never even watched the movie, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and this was just simply amazing. Next up is Expiration Dates. This is a book I've had on my TBR for a while, and it was just one where me and my mom were at a bookstore and she picked it up and she was like, let's just read this and see how it is. And so we buddy read this together, which was so fun. And let me tell y'all the synopsis of this because it is quite interesting and unique. We have our main character, Daphne, and she gets slips of paper with a name and a number on it. And the name is of her next partner, and the number is how long of time she spends with him. She has been receiving these numbered papers for over 20 years, and finally on the night of a blind date, she only sees a name on this piece of paper, no date. So she thinks that she has met her soulmate, and it is much more than that. This book definitely frustrated me because I wanted the book to go a different direction than it went, but it all ended up working out. It was fine. Sorry if the angle changed. My camera battery died from yapping y'all's ear off, but we're almost done, so let me continue. Next up, we have Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. Yet another memoir that I absolutely loved. I don't know if maybe I just love memoirs, but this is seriously a book I think every single person on this earth should read. It was so good. This is a story between Morrie and Mitch. Morrie is a professor who is dying of ALS, and Mitch is his student. And they get together on Tuesdays to talk about literally every topic you could think of. I am trying my best not to cry while talking about this book, but it is beautiful, it is sad. You know, we have Morrie living out his last months of his life, and not a lot of people know when that is. And so it is a story about, you know, grief and dying, and it's so sad, but there's so many important lessons in here, so highly recommend to anyone. Okay, moving on, we have 3 books left, and these have all been in recent reading vlogs. But first off, we have The Golden Couple. This is a mystery, although I did not know what the mystery was for the longest time. This is a story between Marissa and Matthew, and they are known for being this golden couple, but Marissa is unfaithful, and so they go to therapy with our therapist Avery. She is one of the POVs and the other is Marissa. And this therapist Avery is very different. She actually just lost her license to be a therapist because she does things kind of different and illegally. But yeah, I think of this more as a drama surrounding this couple and the therapist's life. This wasn't my favorite, but at no point did I want to DNF it, so yeah. And the last 2 books I read for this quarter were the Crimson Moth duology. So, starting off with Heartless Hunter. This is a story between a witch and a witch hunter. It is also set in Regency, England, I'm pretty sure. Although they didn't really talk like that. I honestly wish they would have, but that's just my preference, probably not everyone's. And it is a fantasy romance. I also think this is young adult. Now, at the very beginning of this book, we are in the aftermath of this revolution. So, witches are no longer free to walk the streets, and our main character Rune is a witch. Not only that, but she is saving lives of other witches, you know, trying to get them to safer land. And then we have our MMC Gideon, who's the witch hunter, and he's so loyal to this revolution. It's kind of annoying at first, but somehow they kind of end up courting one another. It's, you know, it's interesting, but I thought this was a really cute premise. But then I honestly loved this book even more. In this book, we have obviously established the world already, so it's kind of a deeper dive into our 2 main characters. Like, they get a lot of screen time and scenes together, which was really fun. And it was a lot more of political intrigue. These books had potential to be 5 stars if the writing just was a bit more lyrical, just because that's what I enjoy. And also something really pissed me off at the end of this book, and I just didn't understand why it needed to happen. All right, those are all 20 books I have read this quarter. If you are still watching this somehow, you are incredible. Thank you so much. Please let me know if y'all have read any of these books and what your thoughts were. I hope to see you in my next video, which will be a lot less chatty. Bye guys.